Boop, 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 boop.
Hello, everyone. This is Joel Serrano.
Brittany Bonnet.
And of course, this is the Periodic Roundtable. And today we're going to talk to you about
Sleep. Why we need it.
and how we can avoid it.
It's not a good thing to avoid. Most creatures, in fact, almost all creatures with a psyche, need sleep.
Yes, but what are the repercussions? How far can we push the envelope of sleep deprivation?
Well, we're going to be getting into that today.
Wonderful. Well, let's just dive right into why we need sleep. Why must we waste so much time? So, Brittany, why is it that creatures need sleep to begin with?
All right, so, a lot of people do think of it as either a nice escape at the end of the day to kind
Waste
of
of time.
reset. A waste of time, some people might think, but it's actually really, really important, not only for us neurologically, but also physically. It's thought to be that sleep is a way for the brain to reorganize itself at the end of a day, and it's shown to be essential for memory and learning. It's recently been linked to something known as neuroplasticity, and that's the ability of the brain to rewire and adapt over time. Some examples of neuroplasticity include like strengthening and weakening the synapses, and these are structures that allow for the transfer of signals across neurons.
Sending signals across neurons. So like little tiny shotguns in my brain shooting off electrical pulses to transmit information.
Exactly, yeah.
And they just create little networks and all tie together.
Yeah, the neural network. So if you want to build upon that neural network, you need sleep because you need those synapses to be able to regenerate themselves.
It's an entire cluster of nodes inside of itself, all interwoven where electrical pulses go.
Great.
So you're telling me that I essentially have the matrix in my head.
Yes, we are living in the matrix, and the matrix is within us.
Within Whoa. Besides the synapses, Brittany, what else is neuroplasticity related to?
So it's also related to repairing damage by reorganizing the neural network. For example, you may have heard of a brain cancer patient that had lost half of a hemisphere of their brain, but the remaining hemisphere can actually take over the old functions. So if somebody loses a part of their brain that's responsible for memory and learning, that other hemisphere can take that over.
It can almost bend itself, kind of like a gymnastic performer going up and down, twisting their body around to form to whatever they've lost inside of their brain.
I mean, that's a really weird way of putting it, but yeah, sure, if that helps.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you said that if we lose part of our right brain or our left brain, the other part can compensate for it?
Right. You might have heard some people talk in the past that, oh, I'm right-brained, I'm left-brained. That's actually kind of bullshit in the grand scheme of things. We use both sides of our brain. Some people might have more dominance in one side or the other, but we're not exclusively using the left or right.
So essentially, if we were to negate some of the past information that's been misspread, is that we actually use the majority of our brain the majority of the time.
Right. You might have heard people talk about, oh, you only use 10% of your brain. That is not true. Yeah, you might use 10% of your brain at one given time, because if you use 100% of your brain at a given time, that's something known as a seizure. Yeah.
Well, are we also getting into the loss of certain brains? For example, the case study of Gage, who had a railroad spike shoot through his entire head and lose half of his brain.
Right, he had a total personality change, but even though he did lose a part of his brain, he was still able to function, even though his personality was really distorted from what it used to be.
Well, now the personality, if our information is correct, is stored in the frontal lobe of the brain, which is why we used to have this phenomenal surgical procedure called a lobotomy.
Oh yeah, it was real great.
It really helps you calm down at the end of the day. You
Yeah.
just come home, you get a nice lobotomy,
Yeah.
and
Just take the ice pick and jam it right in there.
and you relax.
Yeah. Fun fact, back in the day when wives got too uppity, sometimes their husbands would be like, yeah, my wife is batshit, and they would go and get her a nice lobotomy, and she calmed down.
I bet she did.
Oh yeah, she was real calm
And we
after
got
that.
rid of this?
Yes, we did, Joel.
I'm glad we got rid of it. It would be terrible to destroy people's personalities from their frontal lobe.
Yeah, isn't that horrifying?
It would be. But if we were to talk about neurons that shoot all of these electrical impulses that we can send signals and information and control our body this way, how does that correspond to sleep?
They're not actually sure exactly what the mechanism is behind it. All they know that it is related. So they have found in studies that people who are commonly sleep deprived will have a loss of function and a loss of this neuroplasticity over time. And we'll actually be getting into a little bit later what happens when you start depriving yourself of sleep for way too long.
Now, I am excited about this because I may or may not get enough sleep for
You do not get enough sleep.
individual human.
No.
If we were to go to, what do we have here? Sleep is a natural phenomenon?
Neural.
Neural phenomenon. Good.
Okay,
it's not a natural phenomenon.
we need to cut this part as Joel learns to read.
Listen, I learned my letters long ago. Neurological. If sleep is a neurological phenomenon and you have sleep deprivation, why is it that it affects so many parts of our body if it's only a neurological phenomenon?
It does. It affects a lot of parts of your body.
So every part of your body?
Yeah.
All right. So that's one of the reasons why we need sleep, is that if we don't, there are bad things that are going to happen. Everything's going to shut down.
Oh,
Workers
yeah.
are going to rebel. And they'll start an uprising, and the proletariat cells in our body will rise up against us.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's what I thought.
This
Okay.
sounds exactly like that anime Cells at Work. Great. Cute little show. Highly
Cute little
recommend.
show.
Yes.
Well, besides that, if we get into, let's say, circadian rhythms or biorhythms or how the body operates on a 24-hour cycle, although it's not actually 24 hours, it's 24
Roughly.
hours.
Close enough.
Okay, all right. So we have sunlight coming in and hitting our eyes, hitting our body, and that's going to correspond to our bodies creating a natural development of a certain rhythmic pace. Brittany?
Right. Yes. So this is actually an endogenous process, which means it's a built-in process, but it can actually be affected by something known as a Zeitgeber. So that is an external marker such as light and temperature.
So an external stimuli.
Yeah, exactly. This is present even in plants. So you might see in the evening that flowers or leaves will start to close up, but as soon as light hits them, they'll open again.
Is that phenomenon related to the touch me nots, where they actually have the capabilities of mechanically moving based on external stimuli? And in this case, photons?
Yeah, it's possible. I'm not actually sure about that, but that would be fascinating to look into.
Brittany, we need answers, not questions.
I don't have the answers to everything. Yeah, I'm also not a biologist who...
You're giving them too many clues.
I
as
know,
to what
too many
we are.
clues. There's only so many STEM fields left.
There's only so many. But essentially, sleep being a vital process for animals and humans and basically everything else that has a psyche, it helps immunity, developing responses to injury, cell repairs, storing memory, right?
Right. The body is also in an anabolic state. If you are ever on forums where bodybuilders love talking about the anabolic state, that's what that means. It's the building part of the metabolism. Whereas you might have here of catabolism, which is the breaking down part. Sleep is really essential to this anabolic state if you want to build up and repair your body.
If you're a bodybuilder, power lifter, or general athlete, you're saying that we need enough sleep in order for our bodies to properly repair themselves
So you can recover and then do better.
and then get even stronger.
Yes, must get stronger.
Must get stronger.
So I actually wanted to start going into the stages of sleep, and in addition to why we dream. I found this pretty fascinating. You think of sleep as you just go to sleep, you'll have some crazy dreams, and then you wake up. That's it. There's actually a lot of stages to sleep. The first one is known as N1. So this is a type of non-REM or non-rapid eye movement sleep. And it's really, really light sleep. And if you look at an EEG, also known as electroencephalogram, you would see these peaks that are really high frequency and low amplitude. What this means, I can't really tell you in all honesty, but it's kind of neat to look at. It's the kind of the transition period between wakefulness and sleep. And it only lasts for a few minutes.
Only a few minutes?
Right.
So what about when I start laying down in my nice recliner looking at the sun setting, and I almost feel as though I'm in this twilight zone in between waking and sleeping, where things start to bubble up inside of the psyche?
Right, that is the N1 stage of sleep.
Ah, the N1 stage, in
Yep.
just a few moments.
And surprisingly enough, the next stage is N2.
N2!
N2. Crazy, right? So this is also a non-REM type of sleep, also a light sleep. So these are characterized on the EEG by sleep spindles, and these are bursts of neural oscillatory activity from the thalamus. And these are also mixed with something known as K complexes, which are brief negative high voltage peaks followed by a slower positive peak and another negative peak. In simple terms, it's just something that you can see on an EEG to understand that somebody is starting to actually go into this next stage of sleep.
So if I'm looking at this graph, you're telling me we have a really high peak, and then it goes way down, a little peak, and then a high peak. So it's mountain, valley, mountain, valley, mountain, valley.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And it's just oscillating back and forth.
Yeah. And they don't really understand what these are yet, but it's thought to serve as a way to protect the brain from awakening.
Okay, all right. So it's protecting the brain, right? Because you want to have that nice sleep. You don't want to be woken up. I know I'm upset when I wake up. Not really. I'm actually quite happy when I
Oh, I am very unhappy when I get woken up, especially when my nestled neighbors wake me up. Ooh, yeah.
Yes, yay, screaming children.
Oh, God, the screaming children.
I imagine, though, Brittany, most people will agree with you that they don't like being woken up.
Right. So this is what these things on the do, these sleep spindles and K complexes. They help protect your brain from waking up.
Okay.
And this N2 stage of sleep, it lasts a little bit longer than N1, about 10 to 25 minutes.
10 to 25 minutes.
Right.
Okay, that's stage 2. Now, I'm picturing stage 3, like WSNRG number 3 dash 3.2.
Yeah, sure.
Or otherwise known as N3, still a non-REM sleeping cycle.
Right, it is non-REM, but this one is actually characterized as a deep sleep. This is also known as delta or slow wave sleep.
Delta. So these delta waves that you send out with your mind in order to connect with the cosmos around you, and you get with the vibrational frequencies of the earth itself, and you become one with the rocks, and you sleep with the grandfathers of the soil.
No, not at all.
Okay,
but,
not at all.
Nice try. Nice try.
So,
yeah.
delta or slow wave sleep. So that's going to be high voltage, slow waves on the EEG.
Mm-hmm. And this is the stage of sleep that parasomnias start happening. Some examples of those include sleepwalking or talking during your sleep, and even night terrors or sleep paralysis. These typically occur in these stages. And this lasts about 20 to 40 minutes.
These activities, these parasomniac movements of sleepwalking, night terrors, things of that, does that also last the entirety of this stage if you start experiencing it?
Not always. So some people might experience it for just a minute, and some people might actually experience sleepwalking, for example, the entire stage of the sleep.
This is before REM sleep, which is correspondent to dreaming.
Right.
So you still have these night terrors where you observe these odd phenomenons that might feel real, but you're not sleeping yet, or you're not dreaming yet.
Right. You're sleeping. You're definitely sleeping. It's a deep sleep. But you're kind of on this threshold between, sleep that's really restful and REM sleep. So if you kind of have a bit of wakefulness during this time, you're still kind of on the threshold of dreaming. So that's why sometimes you might see these horrific hallucinations when you have night terrors.
So you're almost stepping on that liminal space in order to see beyond the cosmos that is the physical.
Yes. So I guess maybe you're right about the delta waves.
Oh.
Yeah, we'll see. Science
has yet to answer that question,
Yeah.
so we will not dive further into that.
Yeah, let's not.
So lasting 20 to 40 minutes. What comes after N3? Tell me it's N4.
It's not.
What?
Yeah, there are 3 stages of non-REM sleep, and then there's REM sleep. REM sleep is actually about 20 to 25% of all the sleep that you do. And once you go through that cycle of N1 to N2 to N3 to REM, you actually will return to a non-REM stage before the next cycle. So you will cycle through all of these during a night of sleep. Your first cycle will usually last about 70 to 100 minutes, and then the following cycle is about 90 to 120.
90 to 120.
Yeah, and this will cycle throughout the night. Interestingly, these cycles will change throughout your life. So, for example, a newborn starts their cycle with REM sleep. And then N3 sleep is greatest when young, it lasts the longest when you're much younger, and decreases with age, even if you get the same amount of sleep. So this kind of explains why it's really common in childhood and adolescence to have night terrors, but older people don't really experience them. I can't even remember the last time I had a night terror.
Just because your body naturally is phasing out the need for that N3 stage of sleep. Interesting.
Yeah.
So that would also explain why so many elderly love taking naps, right? They just go straight into it. They don't need that third cycle.
They don't need it, no, they're good.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Isn't it?
So those are the stages of sleep. And I hope that we get into REM rebound sleep, because we should definitely talk about that.
What is REM rebound sleep?
What is REM rebound sleep?
Yeah.
It is my favorite type of sleep, Brittany.
Okay.
As you should know. I believe that we'll be getting into sleep deprivation and the effects that it has briefly. However, if we were to get into REM rebound sleep, it's where you're so sleep deprived that your mind has made up its own mind. That you need the memory encoding more than you need the repairing of the body. So we'll actually skip several stages of that sleep and go straight to REM rebound sleep, which is correspondent to that encoding of memories.
Wow,
So-
that's really interesting.
Evolutionarily, it's been thought by biologists that the reason why we encode in this particular manner for lacking sleep is that it's more important for survival to remember things rather than to repair our bodies.
Really?
Yes.
Huh.
Crazy.
Yeah.
But that is a current running hypothesis for this.
So it's not actually been verified by any scientific communities yet?
For evolutionary biology, looking at these particular things, it's hard to get, cavemen or,
But why not? They have time machines. Can't they just, sit back real quick?
we're still working on it.
Yeah, okay.
Until we can get further verification, this is currently the running idea for REM rebound sleep. So if you go into a long dream after just closing your eyes for merely seconds or a few minutes, this can be correspondent to REM rebound sleep because of your sleep deprivation.
Interesting.
Yes, indeed. You can see some wacky things. Speaking of wacky things and dreaming and jumping into it, why is it that we dream, Brittany?
There's a few theories why. The first theory is that you're just sorting through memories and new things that you learn throughout the day. So studies have shown that those undergoing education of any sort, formal or informal, so if you're in school or if you're just taking an online course, you will actually dream more than somebody who is not undergoing such a thing.
I dream all day, even while I'm awake. I'm still learning.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
All the times those teachers yelled at me to stop daydreaming, they were stopping my education.
They really were. They were just holding you back.
And look at me now, a proud runner and operator, creator of a podcast.
Oh yeah, and a PhD candidate.
Oh yeah, I guess that too.
Oh yeah, who cares
I forgot
about
that
one?
Yeah,
whatever.
yes. All of the memories that we have, this encoding of information, that's one of the reasons why we dream.
Right. There's a few other theories why we do dream. So they also believe that dreams can be the brain's way of interpreting external stimuli. So have you ever been having a really weird dream where you hear something in the background and it's like this horrible monster and it's just like, "Meh!" And then suddenly it gets faster and faster and you realize, oh, that's my alarm clock going off. That's an example of an external stimuli that can actually be translated in a dream. It can also be something with temperature, touch, other outside sounds.
So we're actually dividing the external stimuli that we have and we're interpreting it in different ways.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
If we were to put you to sleep and start putting
Put
random
me to
sounds,
sleep.
To sleep.
Okay.
Sleeping.
All right.
We're not putting you to sleep. Not yet.
Not yet.
Podcast still needs you. Who else is going to do the research?
No one, that's who.
As we are sorting out these external stimuli, are we sorting out other things while we sleep? Because we have sometimes long dreams, sometimes vivid dreams.
Yeah, so that goes into another theory that deals with why we dream, and it could be our way of dealing with emotions. Think about stress-related dreams. We've all had them. I had stress-related dreams for, every day for a month leading up to my prelim. People that undergo trauma have really terrible stress-related dreams.
Okay, so if you have PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder, or if you're a PhD candidate and have to do a preliminary doctoral defense
no. Okay,
yeah,
it's over.
Right. So now we're dealing with emotions. We are having those stress factors into our minds. Several people have had falling dreams, something chasing them, the world ending, dying.
Yeah.
So we are dealing with some of these emotions that have built up from our experiences or perhaps stressful events.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be negative emotions. It could also be positive emotions. There are dreams dealing with love, for example. Dreams dealing with new friendships or good experiences that you had. If you had like a really great day, you might actually have a dream about that. I have that happen all the time. I'll have a really great day and I'll have a dream about it. And so it's like I'm experiencing it twice. It's really lovely when that happens.
Wouldn't that just be phenomenal if that's how we could retire? Just the last year of your life, you hook up to the Matrix, that's your own mind, and you just relive all the happy days until you slowly stop existing.
That sounds like a Black Mirror episode.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, we can avoid that topic then. So, you've given us all of these ideas of how we can actually look at dreaming, why we dream, but are there other ideas about why we dream?
So there's one final theory, and that theory is there's no reason for it at all. Your brain is just sending random firings, and you are vividly hallucinating while you're sleeping. There's no function for it and no purpose.
So, when my dog is sleeping, and...
You don't have a dog?
She is... my hypothetical dog, Brittany. Don't take this away from me.
Okay, your dog. What's her name?
Puppy.
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 Very original.
Yes.
What kind of dog
indeed.
is she?
She was a black lab mastiff mix. When she would jump up, she actually would be the same eye level as me. I taught her how to hug me. It was beautiful.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds like a great dog. Go on.
I mean, she died recently. But
Oh,
what
really?
I was,
That's very sad.
Wasn't it? Well, that's okay.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to have dreams about her tonight.
Yeah. Stress-related dreams.
Stress-related dreams.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Oh, no problem.
But before she passed away, she would, be sleeping and I'd see her little paws running around while she's sleeping, which would also be related to some of the reasons why we sleep or some of the reasons why she's having those running dreams.
Yeah.
I hope that she was chasing something.
She probably was.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes. But we can also talk about dreams, interpretations of dreams, clairvoyance that has been experienced in dreams. Many people have described dreams that have been reoccurring, serious dreams, or dreams about a person before they died, right? A lot of people have expressed these types of dreams, but that can be saved for a later episode, because that's an entire rabbit hole
Oh, yeah.
that we can go down.
Yes.
So avoiding that, let's talk about some of the psychological and physiological effects of the lack of sleep.
All right. I first want to talk about a couple of studies dealing with sleep deprivation. Some of these studies are a little monstrous, especially the first one I'm going to talk about. So there was a researcher called Alan Richtshafen in the 1980s, and he conducted these sleep deprivation tests on rats. He pretty much made the rats stay awake for 32 days straight. And surprise, surprise, all the rats died, which is really sad.
Yes, it is sad, and I would like to take this moment to have a mere second of silence for all the rats that have died in the 1900s for scientific endeavors.
Moment of silence.
All right, it's over.
Okay.
All right, moving on from the rats.
Yeah, they weren't really sure why they died. There are a few theories. Their immune systems were possibly suppressed, which would make them more susceptible to disease. Another theory was it actually caused brain damage, which I could totally see that happening. I feel pretty brain damaged after not getting enough sleep. And the final idea was that it was hyperthermia from body temperature drops killing the rats.
These body temperature drops, perhaps that's from part of that destruction of the brain, where it can no longer regulate its homeostasis.
Yeah, so all these things could actually possibly be linked together.
We do know that the immune system does reduce its capabilities once you have sleep deprivation, which is why often if you have very long work hours at the end of a week, a month, or however long, you'll start getting sick enough to where your body can't keep up with it. And that'll typically make you sleep anyway.
Yeah. And it's kind of an idea too that when you're sick, what's the best way to get better? Sleeping. The last time I got really sick, I woke up and I stood up and I went to the bathroom like, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to conquer today. And I stood up and I looked at the sink and everything went sideways. And I'm like, oh shit. So I emailed my advisor, said I'm not coming in. And I slept for 17 hours straight. And I felt amazing.
17 hours straight?
17 hours straight.
The longest period of time I've been asleep has been 22 hours.
That is impressive.
Indeed. I was vomiting blood before that. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you probably needed the 22 hours. Yeah.
Yay, sleep deprivation!
No sleep deprivation. Going into more studies done with sleep deprivation, there was actually a really large study done, which is great because usually sometimes you'll see studies with people and it's like, oh yeah, we did a study on like 6 people and this is totally true after we studied these 6 people.
Tell me about that p-value.
Yeah, I know, right? But this one, they actually followed up on 1.4 million adults with follow-ups between 4 and 25 years. And what they found was that if you got too little or too much sleep, that was associated with an increased risk of death.
I want you to realize, getting too little sleep, no, that's a problem. Getting too much sleep is still a problem.
Exactly.
So not only deleteriously affecting your capabilities of having a healthy homeostasis, there are psychological effects of having too much sleep, Brittany.
Exactly.
I'm glad we can agree on one thing.
Yes, we can. I get the perfect amount of sleep each day. I'm like a machine.
Now, if you add in the amount of micro naps I take, which is 1 to 10 seconds of sleeping, which feels phenomenal. If you haven't tried it, try the micro naps. I'm telling you, you drop straight into that REM sleep, you bounce back up and you're like, oh, I talked to a leprechaun for a few seconds, I'm ready to go again. Or perhaps you would understand, driving along the highway.
That sounds dangerous. Also, is that what happens when you sometimes pause every once in a while recording? Just having a, 1 second micro nap?
That's exactly what happens.
Oh,
so if
that's great.
The listeners, you hear a pause in our podcast, that is merely me taking a micro nap.
I don't believe you.
Well, so besides the micro naps that we can take, what are some of the other effects on our brain specifically?
Okay. One thing that can happen if you don't get enough sleep
Or too much
on your central nervous system includes depression, anxiety, paranoia, suicidal thoughts, hallucinations, and even manic episodes in people with bipolar disorder.
If you're experiencing some of these things, perhaps you can look at your sleep patterns. Are you waking up at the same time? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you getting too much sleep? Are you getting enough physical exercise in order for your body to regulate its own circadian rhythm that we talked about previously?
Mm-hmm. And some of these things can also have a cause and effect going on. So people with depression sometimes don't get enough sleep, but sometimes they sleep too much. Kind of a chicken and egg scenario there.
The egg obviously came first. That's not debatable.
It's really not, but I mean,
it's
just a saying, Joel.
Why do you use a poor analogy to understand
sorry.
this? We're a science podcast, okay?
All right, I'm sorry.
Besides the central nervous system, why don't we talk about the immune system, a vitally important part of our body, the champions, the knights inside of our body, fighting off the evil, sneaky, ninja-like pathogens.
What the hell is going on in your body?
A lot of things have happened.
Okay. Anyway, moving on. With your immune system, if you don't get enough sleep, you will have a drop of cytokine production. So cytokine is a protein that participates in cell signaling and helps regulate the immune response. Because of this, you'll have a higher risk of disease, both acute, such as the common cold and flu, or chronic disease, such as diabetes.
So if the flu season is happening and I'm not getting enough sleep, I'm increasing the probability that I will catch that flu.
You are, exactly.
And side note, little public service announcement, get your flu shots.
Yes, get them today.
In fact, get all of your inoculations that are necessary for the places that you live.
We're vaccinated. You should be too.
Are.
And we're alive. I made it to 30.
I've made it to 24, but if I make it to 37, I'll be disappointed in myself. But vaccinations will be a different episode.
Oh, yeah.
So, what about other parts of our bodies? There are systems inside of our body that work phenomenally when we're getting enough sleep, the proper diet, and exercise. Mm-hmm. So the endocrine system, what happens there? What fails?
So the endocrine system is kind of interesting. There's a lot of stuff that can actually happen to the endocrine system if you don't get enough sleep. So it can interfere with your hormone production. This includes testosterone and human growth hormone. And it can also cause a decrease in glucose tolerance and insulin sensitivity. And in addition, it can increase your levels of cortisol and ghrelin and decrease levels of leptin.
Okay, so glucose, sugar inside of our body. Mm-hmm. Perfect. Insulin, the capabilities of intercalating the sugar into our cells so that we can actually use it.
Yes.
And cortisol, or the stress hormone that is released inside of our body.
Yeah, do not want a lot of that. And then there's also ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone. So people who don't get enough sleep have increased levels of ghrelin, and that is actually tied to an increase in obesity because you're always hungry.
Always hungry?
Yeah, and this is kind of tied to the levels of leptin. So leptin is the hormone that signals that you're full and you're sated. If those levels decrease and your ghrelin increases, then that's also tied to obesity.
It's fascinating how all of these hormones can correspond to our external behavior. So if I don't get enough sleep and I start getting all the gremlins or gremlins?
Sure, gremlins.
Gremlins, all the gremlins.
They might as well be
gremlins. They are starving for more and more loot of the organic food type. Mm-hmm. And I will become either obese, or if I get too many leprechauns or leptin, I will be too satiated and be happy with my pot of gold or organic gold and not eat enough. This endocrine system that actually releases all these hormones, it's paramount that we get enough sleep for this to properly operate. In America, really, one of the leading problems that we have for death is cardiovascular system failing. Mm-hmm. Now, sleep is also related to this as well, right?
Right. So if you don't get enough sleep, you're going to have an increase in blood pressure. You're going to have a lack of repair to the blood vessels in the heart, and you're going to have increased cardiovascular inflammation. So there's actually a link between insomnia and stroke and heart attack.
Insomniac, heart attack is what you're telling me.
Oh, yeah. The name of the show. We said it. The name of the show. Take a drink.
Yes! That'll also be a song title for the Danger Noodles.
Stop
soon.
Plugging the Danger Noodles.
2019. Getting into sleep deprivation, we've talked about some of the effects on the systems. Let's dive a little bit deeper into sleep deprivation, because I believe that in America, we are actually one of the countries, one of the industrialized countries, that works the most, and thereby many professions, high-end professions as well, reduce the amount of sleep that they get so that they can work their occupation, make enough money for their family, and do everything else in their life.
Yeah.
Let's get into that a little bit more about sleep deprivation.
Yes. We can talk about sleep deprivation in the sense of over time. So, for example, if you go without sleep for 24 hours, that's actually equivalent to having a blood alcohol concentration of 0.10%.
Wow,
Yeah.
that is intense.
Yeah, so that's over the legal limit in most states. So if you're driving with 24 hours of sleep deprivation, you might as well be drunk.
Might as well be drunk.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel as good as being drunk.
Oh, absolutely not.
Unless you hit the point in that night where everything is funny.
Oh yeah, that's a fun point.
That it's
Yeah.
exactly like being
Yeah,
drunk.
exactly. But you'll also have drowsiness, memory deficits, lack of hand-eye coordination, tremors, irritability, increased muscle tension, poor judgment and decision making. So yeah, I guess kind of like being drunk.
So don't go on a shopping spree. Don't end up in a bank heist.
Don't end up at a Denny's.
Where else do you go if you're sleep deprived? Waffle House.
That's another one.
No,
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, yeah.
Listen, we're not advocating you to end up anywhere. We advocate you to find a nice hammock in the woods by yourself under the stars with the moon shimmering and lighting your path.
Finding a hammock in the woods. That sounds like a great way to get murdered.
Brittany, we're not talking about murders on this episode.
There's way too many podcasts about murders. Let's not do that.
Avoiding the... What if we talk about scientific euthanasia?
Okay, yeah, we can do that.
All right.
All right.
Moving on. So 24 hours of sleep deprivation, 0.1% blood alcohol content.
Yeah.
What happens if we increase that sleep deprivation?
All right, so if you really want to get into it, once you hit 36 hours of no sleep, you're going to hit extreme levels of fatigue. You're going to have these horrible effects on your appetite metabolism, so going back to the endocrine system again, and you're going to have a decreased body temperature and hormonal imbalances.
So the hormonal imbalances are related to the endocrine system that we talked about previously. Once you hit this, you're really digging into your body's capabilities to maintain homeostasis or your baseline for normal function.
Right.
And there are certain training programs that are being used that require you to be up for this amount of hours in order to get used to this type of lifestyle, which will have deleterious long-term chronic effects.
Yeah, that sounds awful. What kind of training programs are these?
Often related to military, paramilitary, or martial.
That
But
sucks.
you're still not dying at 36 hours.
No, you're not dying. You want to die.
You might feel
Yeah.
the pain. In fact, sleep deprivation is often used as a torture mechanism to get information from people as well.
Yeah, I'm an open book when I'm sleep deprived.
Very effective.
Yeah.
Again, increasing that blood alcohol content relation to drowsiness and decision making.
Exactly.
But at 36 hours, we're still okay.
Yeah.
Maintaining.
Yeah, you're not okay, but yeah, you'll live.
What if we go further?
All right, we'll go further to 48 hours. Eventually, you're going to get a fall, a drop in the natural killer cell activity. So these are cells that help fight off infection. And this is the point where you start having microsleeps regularly. So microsleeps aren't really something that you can control at all. You'll be in the middle of a sentence and then you just fall asleep and you'll wake up.
So, the killer cells, the fighters,
Yeah.
the true underground hunting down all the sneaky pathogens
Yeah.
slipping inside of our veins.
Yes, the nights that you mentioned earlier.
Yes, indeed. So they fail. But we're still not dead. We just start lapsing in our neurological activity. Okay. What if, Brittany, I really had to finish that last paper for this class and it just had to be done and I had to stay up for more than 48 hours?
All right, if you really want to go there, once you start hitting 72 hours, that's when you start experiencing really severe hallucinations, paranoia, anxiety, depression, and you have highly decreased cognitive functions. So is it really worth it to stay up that long to finish that paper or cram for that exam or what have you? Because you're gonna not really be able to perform cognitively anyway.
Not only will we won't be able to think, we won't be able to fight off infections, we won't be able to control our emotions or hormones, we'll start decreasing our capabilities to accomplish any of these activities at 72 hours, which is, what, 3 days?
Yeah.
Only 3 days,
3
and we
days.
completely shut down our capabilities as a human
Right.
to operate.
Yeah. So is the sleep deprivation really worth it?
Is it?
It's not.
Is it?
It's not.
It's definitely not.
It's not worth it.
72 hours is too far.
Oh yeah. That's intense.
We've talked about sleep deprivation and the effects that it can have on you, but let's talk about some of the disorders that you can have. What can keep you up? What can make you fall asleep randomly? What can happen in your brain when it's trying to interconnect with itself and get rid of all of the waste products?
All right, so there are some types of sleep disorders that a lot of people have heard of. You probably heard of insomnia. Everybody's heard of insomnia. Everybody's heard of sleep apnea. And you probably heard of something known as narcolepsy. So I actually want to get a little bit more into narcolepsy because I feel like it's a poorly understood sleep disorder. When you usually see it in popular media, you see somebody who's just walking along, minding their own business, and suddenly they fall asleep. That's not really true to what narcolepsy actually is. It's characterized by this excessive daytime sleepiness, something known as cataplexy as well. So cataplexy is a sudden loss of muscle tone. It's typically triggered by strong emotions, and this is linked to decreased levels of orexin or hypercretin, which is a neuropeptide that regulates wakefulness. They're also experiencing quick transitions into REM sleep, so they might skip these first N1 to N3 type sleeps. They also experience a lot of sleep paralysis and something known as hypnagogic hallucinations.
What is hypnagogic hallucinations?
These are something known as a threshold consciousness. This is being between asleep and awake, so kind of related to the N1 type sleep. Here, one may experience visual hallucinations, such as somebody standing over them or them entering a tunnel. Something that a lot of people will experience as well is auditory hallucinations. So have you ever been drifting off and you're almost there, you're almost asleep, and it's all quiet, and then you hear somebody say, "Brittany!" and then you wake up.
They also yell Brittany when I'm almost asleep.
Oh, wow, that's weird. Yeah, so...
If you experience that too, please email us and let us know.
Please email us and let us know. Oh, God. But this is really common. Like, a lot of people will experience their name being called or a knocking at the door, a doorbell. Sometimes they'll even experience synesthesia.
Brittany, now, what is synesthesia?
That's when you can experience a different sense when you are stimulated by another one. So, for example, colors can have sound associated with them, or numbers can have music associated with them.
What about when I'm smelling red?
Okay, that's also synesthesia, and you also might be dying.
Is that what happens when you're dying? You start intertwining all of your different senses?
I mean, yeah, sure.
You smell very brown right now.
Oh, thanks.
There's an earthy musk.
Thanks. That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me.
As half-hearted as that's true. So that's narcolepsy. I've had friends that will Google narcolepsy in corgis and other dogs, and you'll see them running, and they'll just plop over.
That's adorable.
It is adorable. I mean, sad for the neurological disorder that they possess,
yeah,
but adorable to watch.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
at least we can be entertained.
This is also narcolepsy, but in a different form?
Yeah, so not only can humans experience narcolepsy, so can animals.
Okay. If we have so many humans and animals that experience narcolepsy, is there something we can do about it?
Sadly, no. There is no known cause and no known cure, but there are a few things that they can use to treat it. So you can be treated with stimulants or SSRIs, which, as we all know, is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor.
What about if I pop my favorite party drug, melatonin? Will that help?
So people have tried melatonin before with narcolepsy, but it doesn't really have a large effect, interestingly enough. They're not really sure why. And melatonin doesn't affect a lot of people, in addition.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, when I party with it as much as I do, we get real close.
I mean, it's a little different from popping the pill and snorting it from, a hooker's ass, but...
Now. It's not from the ass. No one... Well, unless you're into that. We don't need to get into how I snort my melatonin. Anyways... The opposite of narcolepsy, right? Let's get into some of that, which is my favorite kind.
Yes.
Insomnia!
Okay, so there's insomnia, and then there's insomnia.
Da-na-na!
So there is something known as fatal familial insomnia.
Does that mean my entire family is going to die from not sleeping?
Not necessarily. The name is tied from the fact that this disease runs in certain families. So it's actually an incredibly rare disease with only 24 cases ever diagnosed, and it's actually a prion, which is a misfolded protein.
Whoa. Before we go further, prions, which, mind you, are some of the scariest things that can happen in your body.
So scary.
You think Ebola is scary? All right, bleeding faces can be a little scary, but Prions, on the other hand, what an example will actually be mad cow disease, is misfolded proteins. Now, Brittany, these things, what make them so scary is you can't fight against them.
There's nothing you can do.
There's nothing you can do. Once you have a misfolded protein, it's like, let's say, an anarchist rising up, and they've realized that the body is actually working together as one social unison, and they have decided to rebel. And what happens is once they find a friend and they can convert them, i.e., the protein finds another protein and makes it misfold so that it can actually attach together and stack on top of each other, it will start growing and growing, and the anarchistic society inside of our body that is known as prions will grow and uprise again.
That's actually a pretty good analogy.
Thank you. The only way that Brittany and I can talk are through analogies.
Yeah.
It's almost like she can't understand anything. Like a little child wandering in the middle of the woods and finds a little trash panda. And it's like, oh, what are you? And you have to create these stories and analogies for her to comprehend.
I hate you.
So, getting back to fatal familial insomnia.
Let's get back to fatal familial insomnia. So, going back to fatal familial insomnia, it only has a life expectancy of 7 months to 6 years with an average of 18 months. So once you're diagnosed, there's not really a lot they can do for you. And the gene for FFI is only found in 40 families globally, hence the name, fatal familial insomnia.
40 families? So the snogglers that I met long ago, they were one of them.
Really? Huh. Interesting. Moving on.
Moving on.
So, there are 4 stages to this disease, and it is both terrifying and heartbreaking to see these different stages.
Let's get down into it.
Oh yeah, let's get into it. For 0 to 4 months of having this prion start to attack your neurons, what can happen is you have a worsening insomnia coupled with panic attacks, anxiety, paranoia, and phobias.
Okay, so that's the first 4 months. That's not so bad.
Yeah.
All right, you have anxiety, paranoia, phobias.
Can't really sleep.
Can't sleep.
Yeah.
Okay, panic attacks.
Yeah.
I can deal with this. This is a normal day.
I can't deal with it, but
Okay,
yeah.
that's
okay.
4 months. What happens if we go past 4 months?
Okay, so 4 to 9 months, you will have worsening panic attacks. So they'll be much more intense and much more frequent. And you'll also start having hallucinations.
Hallucination. Say you're driving down the road and you start seeing a family of giraffes coming out of the woods to stop your car.
Yeah, this actually happened to me once when I was driving. I saw a family of giraffes when I was sleep deprived in the hills of West Virginia.
In the hills.
Yes.
The well-known Giraffe Hill population.
Yeah, it's a really common animal there. But
Giraffus connosaurus.
yeah,
Thank you.
yep.
But if we're moving past 9 months,
Okay, moving past 9 months, going into 12 months, you start having a complete inability to sleep. So not even having any micro sleeps, not nodding off, you cannot sleep at all. It is physically impossible to sleep.
you are super productive, right? You can't
No.
sleep at all. You have 24 hours in the day.
No, you are not productive because the whole time that you're awake, you're having these panic attacks, hallucinations, anxiety. You're also undergoing this really rapid weight loss. So you can't really do anything physical either. You're losing a lot of muscle tone, and you're just starting to look like shit.
A rapid degradation of the body.
Mm-hmm.
And that's at 12 months?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. If we were to get even more sad, what happens if we go past 12 months?
All right, so once you get past 12 months, you're kind of in the fatal steps of this disease. So 12 to 18 months, you start experiencing dementia, and you're going to start having unresponsiveness and muteness. So you're kind of just sitting there awake, not able to communicate, not able to remember anything, any of your loved ones, who you are, what you're doing, just sitting there, existing.
At the 12 months, you're just sitting there existing, not truly being able to be a human or have cognitive functions or a proper homeostasis.
Yeah, it's pretty sad.
That is quite disappointing.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the other symptoms that we can experience besides this loss of consciousness?
Other symptoms include the elevated blood pressure and heart rate. Women will have sudden menopause onset, and men will get suddenly impotent. And you can also get stuck in hypnagogia, which is, again, that threshold between sleeping and awake. Not too interestingly, but your pupils will be excessively constricted.
So tiny little black pebbles in the middle of your
Yeah,
eyeballs.
kind of scary to think about as somebody sitting there, like just staring off into space.
With no pupils?
Yeah,
Whoa.
yeah, whoa.
A very sad and fatal disease.
Oh, very fatal. There has never been a case of somebody living through it.
Again, the scary prions
That will also be another episode.
rising up.
Yeah.
We've talked about this. Can we talk about any other diseases or neurological disorders related to sleep?
Yeah, something that a lot of people may have experienced before in the past is something known as sleep paralysis. Paralysis is when you are in REM sleep and the physical abilities of your body have been shut down so you don't hurt yourself in your sleep. And then suddenly you wake up and there's some guy with tentacles on his face standing over you, and he's holding a knife and he's going to kill you. And you try to run, but you can't. You can't scream, you can't talk, you can't do anything but move your eyes. So the only thing you can do is close your eyes and go back to sleep, and eventually you wake up and he's gone.
Were you staring in my window last night?
No.
That's sleep paralysis.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any others that we want to talk about in this particular episode? We've hit some of the important ones that we wanted to highlight that perhaps has had either misinformation or a lack of information. Some of you are still familiar with insomnia and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
But are there any others we wish to talk about here?
Something else that a lot of people may experience is something that most people experience as children, actually, is sleepwalking. Sleepwalking is usually pretty harmless, but some people have had really intense episodes of it where they don't recall what happened at all, and it has actually been used as a defense in criminal cases where somebody murdered somebody while sleepwalking.
There are several colleagues I have that do experience sleepwalking, and they will not keep any weapons inside of their home because they sleepwalk to avoid any possibility that something like this could happen. And one of my colleagues actually jumped through a window while sleepwalking and had to go to the hospital and stitch up all of the glass shards that were in his body.
Wow.
So sleepwalking can be more than just walking. It can be running, it can be jumping, it can be stabbing.
Yeah. Shooting, beating, you know.
Fortunately, there are ways to mitigate sleep paralysis and sleepwalking, what you can look into if you experience these things.
I know one good way to avoid sleep paralysis, because I used to experience it a lot. Surprisingly, don't sleep on your back. Sleep on your side. If you sleep on your back, you have a much higher chance of entering a sleep paralysis state.
That's because all of the leprechauns and goblins are traveling through your body, fighting each other. But if you sleep on your side, everyone knows that goblins are the only ones that can climb high enough, and so they separate from the leprechauns.
Yeah, that's real scientific right
And
there.
with that, we have been the Periodic Roundtable. Thank you for listening to us again this week. Brittany?
If you are interested in checking out some references or learning more about the Periodic Roundtable, you could visit our social media. So we're on Facebook. Just search for us under Periodic Roundtable. You can also find us on Instagram and Twitter at PRTcast.
We also have references and acknowledgments posted on our social media. Please look at that if you wish to have more information. And as always, any questions, comments, and or concerns, send them to us at whatever email Brittany has already previously said.
PRTcast@gmail.com.
Wow.
Yeah.
We even have an email?
Yeah, we even have an email.
Wonderful. Well, that's it for this week, guys. I hope that you'll join us next week for
Earth-like planets, what they are, how astronomers will detect a planet, and how it's Earth-like. And we'll talk about viable travel to these planets. Will we get to these planets before we destroy ourselves? And if we do, will we become a plague on the galaxy that wipes out planet after planet? Yes, very interesting stuff. We will talk about this next week.
We will see you next week.